Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is, you could say your name.
Michael Murphy.
So what do you do? Whatever that means to you.
I've pretty much had a career doing disaster planning and response, initially as a paramedic providing patient care, and that eventually morphed into medical system disaster response full-time for the last 20, 25 years or so.
What is, I guess, really just as simple as, what does that mean?
What does that mean? Yes, that's a very good question. Is when something bad happens and it affects the medical system, generates patients, affects the medical system in some way, shape, or form. What I've done in the past is check on the medical system and try to help mitigate the problem or provide support for the medical system so they can take care of the patients and be able to maintain their structural integrity so they're still there after the incident.
So I'm going to take this moment to point out the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm just going to say that any sort of professional opinion will not be coming from you. So if anyone that is listening wanted to hear that, just go to the official public.
Yeah, there's actually a structure in place, and that's part of the whole response structure, that information is actually channeled through identified individuals and identified processes. Now, you can't stop social media, can't stop the mainstream media, but those of us that are actually in a response mode really are not allowed to discuss the response because that has to go through. And that's done with a specific purpose to make sure that the messaging is consistent and approved and things like that. Some people will say it's filtered, but everything gets filtered in some way, shape, or form. But the main part of it is that you don't have any wildcat messaging going out there, which creates confusion. And we've seen enough of that already.
Yeah. Well, cool. So we've gotten that out of the way. We're not going to be talking about COVID. That's fine. So how did you get started on that? At what point did that become your career?
Always been interested in medicine since I was a kid. Anatomy. There were early TV shows like Rescue 8, which is dating myself way back, that I absolutely loved. Had initial plans of being a doctor, but like most people, once I got through with my first year of academic studies at my 13th grade community college, that option was pretty much out the door. Went to work as a veterinary technician, which was probably the best job that I've ever had. I loved it. Didn't pay anything, but I loved it. And then eventually an opportunity came up to be a paramedic, and that kind of caught my eye. So I went through the process of doing that, found out that I loved it, was good at it, and did that for years. And then as time went on, went through many disasters as a field paramedic. The Flight 90 crash in Washington, D.C. And actually, I was involved with the subway crash that occurred almost simultaneously during a blizzard in Washington, D.C. Talk about an interesting day. That was an interesting day. And the IBM mass shootings back before mass shootings were a thing. So I developed some experience, some expertise on it, and some interest, and eventually got up to a high enough level within administration that they wanted somebody to do that on a regular full-time basis. So I started doing that. And then in 1998, 99, the federal government, responding to the Tokyo sarin attacks, developed a program where they went to each city in the country and asked them to do medical system planning and preparedness. It was a contract, and they asked me to do that full time. Well, actually, it was an 18-year temporary project, or not 18-year, 18-month temporary project. And then when the jets went into the World Trade Center, that 18-month temporary project became a full-time job. That position is still going.
Sure.
So then I ended up doing that full-time, just working on medical system preparedness. And really it started with the federal government said, if somebody released some sarin gas in the middle of one of our subway systems, how would our country do? How would we respond?
Sure.
And the answer was we would not respond real well.
Right.
So they were actually working the issue before the incident at the Twin Towers. And then once the terrorist attack occurred, then the federal checkbook opened, programs opened, and it became a much larger project. But to their credit, the federal government actually had been working it since 1996, really.
Sure.
Because they saw what happened over in Tokyo and realized that we're in a new world and we better start working on it.
Yeah. I'm trying to find which one of these paths to chase down. So do you think that because that project had begun earlier, that the response, especially on September 11th, was better, or was it still not? Was the infrastructure still not well in place enough to be prepared for something like that?
The infrastructure was, well, first of all, what happened on 9/11 was just extraordinary, unusual, different, and huge in scope and scale. So even the best prepared, if we'd been doing it for 20 or 30 years, would have a hard time doing that. I think it helped because there had been efforts within the medical system in New York City to do joint planning and work together. But it was still relatively in its infancy stages. So I would answer the question by saying, yes, it helped, but it didn't solve all the problems.
Sure. Okay, well, I'll just follow this train of thought then. Since, you're not a doctor, but you do work in medical systems, I guess what's the distinction between sort of being a medical professional versus what you do?
Yeah, that's an excellent question because people ask me that all the time. The doctor is the pinnacle of delivering clinical care to an individual patient. He or she's had an incredible amount of education, and what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of hard work working the floors, 20,000 hours of clinical experience before they cut them loose to be able to treat anybody.
Sure.
But their focus is on the individual patient, and they're providing clinical treatment.
Yeah.
So you're looking at that as from an individual unit base as opposed to a system base where you're looking at all the doctors. And not only all the doctors, but all the nurses and everybody that makes up this huge infrastructure that we call our medical system and then our public health system.
Right.
So I look at it from the macro level where the individual physician will be treating a patient at the micro level.
Right.
It helps to have clinical expertise to a certain degree. So being a paramedic helped.
Yeah.
So I can understand their world to a certain degree and what the impact of some decisions made at the macro level may have at the micro level. There are certainly physicians that operate at the macro level.
Yeah.
And do it quite well. But that's probably the biggest difference is I'm looking at it from a system approach as opposed to the physician looking at an individual patient or an individual emergency department approach.
Yeah. Does it, do you kind of face issues in that since you aren't a doctor, that your opinion is sort of distrusted from that clinical perspective because you...
Very rarely do you run it. Number one is I don't pretend to be a clinical expert.
Sure.
but I have expertise in certain things that the physicians don't. And my experience has been is that as long as you recognize their expertise and their capabilities, and you don't try to usurp those or pretend like you've got the same level, they're very willing to work with you. I've had relatively few instances of ever dealing with a physician when it comes to preparedness and planning and things like that, that where, you know, they thought they knew more than I did. Things like that. They'll get accused of that a lot because they're extremely intelligent people, very well educated and trained, and they have opinions. And they're also patient advocates, so they'll offer opinions.
Sure.
But usually there's a way to make a happy middle ground. Where we run into conflict is when you look at it from the greater good versus the individual patient. Physicians tend to be advocates for their individual patients. And sometimes we have to look at it from a greater good aspect that may conflict. Sort of like the public health approach, where public health looks at communities versus individuals, where the medical system looks at individual patients. And so sometimes there's a conflict. Classic example would be the use of antibiotics. From a public health perspective, they would want to limit the use of antibiotics because you're building up immunity within the organisms. So only use it where it's absolutely indicated. Whereas some physicians may give somebody an antibiotic even though they know it's viral, just in case, or that's because what the patient wants. Antivirals is another one. Don't give everybody Tamiflu because the influenza or virus will develop immunity to it, where a physician will say, I've got a patient who's incredibly uncomfortable, sick, and I've got a medication that will relieve their suffering, so I'm going to give them the medication. But that's the exception to the rule. The vast majority of the time, they're walking hand in hand because one can't survive without the other.
How much time did you spend as a paramedic?
I started EMS in 1976, became a paramedic in 78, and I just let my license lapse in 2018. So basically I was 40 years as a paramedic. Now, I actually worked as a paramedic from 78 to 92. Then I became a field supervisor, so another 10 years where I was out there supervising other paramedics, but still practicing. And then after 98, 99, then it was pretty much going into the systems approach.
Oh man, I was forgetting how I was going to word this question. Okay, since you kind of work in the crisis part of that, is there ever a point that the system is not in some sort of crisis thing? Like, what is the normal zero state, if at all?
Well, the system does have a zero state. Now, there's always a low-level crisis type thing. It depends on the time of day, time of year, where you are geographically located, what's going on. Summertime versus wintertime, things will be different. The problems to the system will be different. Normally, the system tends to suffer a whole lot more from November until March just because of influenza season. So that taxes the system more because there's more patients that need to be cared for and more providers that get ill with the flu. So there's always a low level changes. It's a very dynamic system. But for the most part, the system takes care of itself. With individual pockets of mini crisis. One hospital may get overloaded and want to send their patients elsewhere. That's a constant thing. But that's dealt with on a daily basis by the people within the system without any really outside assistance.
What have been the common trends that cause stress on the system?
The system, basically the way to look at it is resource. If you have the resources to treat the patients, then everything seems to be fine and hunky-dory. If you have enough staff in your ER and you have the access to diagnostics and ORs, then the system just clicks right along. The things that upset the system are breaks within the resources. So if something happens with staffing, if the volume of patients suddenly increases because now the staffing you have is not adequate, so you've got a resource shortfall there. If their building gets damaged, if the utilities that support the building, which is a relatively common one compared to the others, if all of a sudden power goes out, hospitals have generators. But one of the things that they're most dependent upon is water. A hospital cannot function longer than probably 24 hours without water. And it's used in so many different parts of the hospital system. But things like that. So it's just if there's any interruption in the resource needs, then there's a temporary crisis, and then depending upon how long that interruption occurs, then you get into real crisis. It's interesting because on May 20th, 2013, when we had that massive tornado, the day of the tornado was absolutely horrific. We had people die, children die. We had lots of people injured, but it didn't really negatively affect the medical system. We even had a hospital that was hit by the tornado that had to be evacuated. But the hospital system had enough resources and enough capacity that it was easily able to address that situation. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the Draper water plant lost both its sources of power. And so it could no longer pump water to about a third of the city. And that meant 13 hospitals were without water. And I actually, the day after the tornado was more of a crisis for me because I was looking at having to evacuate 1,000 patients to put them in hospitals that still had water and could run air conditioners and things like that. Thank the Lord for small favors. They got the water back on. We actually did move some patients, but not nearly the amount that we were looking at. But that's an example of, even though there's a lot of patients, if the system can handle those patients, it's not really a crisis. Now it's a crisis to the individuals involved and the people that died or lost loved ones. But from a system point of view, that wasn't a major stressor. The major stressor was the next day when the water didn't work for 12, 24 hours.
So speaking of things like that, what are the little things that are kind of unseen stressors that people wouldn't normally consider that becomes a big deal, even if it...
The two big, the immediate ones is utility is how fragile our utility systems are and how much the medical system depends upon that. And it could be anything from transportation. If dialysis patients can't get to dialysis, that creates an issue. Snowstorms can create a problem. So it's interruptions to the infrastructure. And then the other is probably new novel diseases where the medical system doesn't know how to protect themselves, doesn't know exactly how that disease is going to present. Then that becomes a threat or a potential threat to each individual healthcare provider. They'll still be there taking care of patients, but that's a real stressor to the system. And all of a sudden protection equipment can be utilized, and then you've got another resource challenge that you got on your hands. As far as patient volume, they usually handle patient volume surges on a semi-regular basis. So as long as it's not overwhelmingly excessive, they adapt and they handle the what we call a surge, and then they come back down to pre-surge levels. They do that every year with the flu season, things like that. Now, obviously, if the number of patients becomes sustained and excessively high, then you've got issues about having to ration care and things like that.
Sure.
But the immediate ones is probably the new diseases or unknown diseases that they're not familiar with, so they don't know exactly how to treat, and more importantly, they don't know exactly how to protect themselves, which is the situation that we're in right today.
Sure.
And then the other one is probably just the damage or the interruption of the infrastructure that the medical system depends upon. That can have an immediate effect.
Yeah. Since you've been doing this for a while, how has technology affected or impacted, made your job easier or harder in some cases?
It's done both.
Yeah.
I remember during the Oklahoma City bombing, I had a cell phone that we called the Brick because it was so big, but at least I had a cell phone.
Sure.
One of the infrastructure issues that has come about has been the information technology infrastructure, and hospitals are incredibly reliant on that.
Yeah.
The internet, X-rays are all digital now.
Yeah.
They're sending information back and forth. All electronic charting is digital. So you lose the internet. The hospital has to go back 20 years, 30 years, and there's nothing nicer than to see the joy of that 30-year nurse that worked in the day when they had to write things down on paper and doesn't miss a lick when the internet or that electronic record goes down because he or she hates that thing anyway.
Right.
And then they sit with glee while the younger nurses can't function because they've never had to write a chart on paper.
Right.
So it's enabled the medical system to do wonderful things: imaging, disease detection, lab, communications, telemedicine has been huge to get out into the rural areas. So it has definitely improved the life of the medical world. But it's also now one of those infrastructure issues that you're very dependent upon. And if there's any interruption to it, it interrupts the medical system.
Yeah. What about improvements in like medical technology? For example, like making treatment go faster, or I guess in some cases slower too.
Well, that has skyrocketed, and it's still, it's one of these daily doublers where it's not growth is not linear, it's exponential. There are people alive today because of technology that was developed 10, 20 years ago, where the same disease process in the same person would have been a fatal event. And it's very easy to see that happening. And we're continually developing new technology, new processes that can cure disease or reduce long-term suffering. So that has been a very significant improvement to the medical system. At the same time, they're incredibly expensive.
Right.
They tend to be focused on one patient. Now, if you or your loved one is that one patient, you don't care. So we're getting into some type of cost issues. The other thing is that we're able to prolong life longer than we've ever been able to.
Right.
And so then you start getting into some ethical questions about, just because we can, should we? Well, the answer is easy if it's you or your loved one. But from a large umbrella view, that's some of the challenges. But I think the overall assessment is that the brilliant minds of many have developed some incredible technologies that are really changing the lives of people today that weren't available 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. I don't know if you sort of keep up with those sort of developments, but is there something that you're kind of hearing about that, like, kind of obviously the current thing going on, notwithstanding, but like that you're excited about, that if this thing goes through, it'll help?
I can't think of anything right now. There's all sorts of different ones that are on the the edge, and it's also just improvements of existing products, like vaccine development. If we can shorten that time cycle for vaccine development, medication development, there's a lot of hope in using different types of plant materials that nobody ever thought about before. Going back and looking at historical, rather primitive care systems and realizing that there was some method to the madness that they were doing there, that the plants that they were using, some of the using different types of animals, the venoms of animals that are having some really promising anticoagulant and cardiac type medications. There's a scary part about the antibiotics because we've actually, some will say that we've just been through 50 years, 60 years, the golden age of antibiotics. We're running out of options. We don't have any new antibiotics in the pipeline, quote unquote. The bugs are getting smarter. The viruses are getting smarter. So we're seeing a whole lot of resistant type strains of bacteria. But then at the same time that you're worried about that, there's a lot of people out there with very brilliant minds. And so I'm excited to see what that comes at. And it seems to be that we're looking at Mother Nature for things that we ignored before that may actually give us some pretty good treatment options.
I guess because thinking about that makes me think about the hygiene hypothesis, about the balance between, washing your hands all the time or kind of letting a little bit in every now and again. I guess where would you stand on that front? Do you...
I like the idea of the herd immunity and letting your kids go dig in the dirt and things like that. I think that to be putting kids in a bubble creates issues or may create issues. I don't think anybody knows definitively. At the same time, if there are vaccines or other treatments or other processes that work,
right.
I think that you should make yourself available to that. So there's certain things is you can't wash your hands enough. The clue to washing your hands enough is when your skin breaks down, and then find some soap with some lanolin in it or something like that. There's good daily healthcare and hygiene practices that go on. And it's interesting because whenever we have any type of infectious disease or any type of public health issue, not just this one, but the ones in the past, it always seems to go back down to common sense things are what really makes the difference. And so if we carry on those common sense things every day of our lives, we can do a lot to mitigate the disease. But I think there's some benefit to the natural exposure to germs. It's just, what's the balance? You don't want to take your kid or do like they did in the 1700s where you have smallpox parties or chickenpox parties where your kids would get the chickenpox and get it over and done with. One parent has a kid with chickenpox and puts out the alert and everybody brings their kids over to get exposed. I don't think we should go that far, but a filthy, dirty kid is probably a happy and a healthy kid. And I think that's a good thing.
Right. But they should still probably wash their hands before touching other people, at least.
Yes, I still think that common sense things, covering your mouth when you cough and sneeze and washing your hands, that's societal wise, that's just a good thing.
Sure.
You don't even have to get to the health part of it, but that's the core principles of good public health practice.
Yeah. So, you kind of enticed me with mentions of crazy stories of things that have happened in the past. So I guess pick one or two things that you've experienced that you feel are an interesting story, at least to tell.
Now you put me on the spot. Now I can't think of anything.
You mentioned one during a blizzard. Oh
yeah, the Flight 90 crash. a lot of people remember the Flight 90 crash because Air Florida jet crashed into the 14th Street Bridge, I think it was, and went into the Potomac River. Then you had the dramatic, video footage of Eagle One and Lenny Skutnik and getting out the 4 or 5 survivors that made it out of that. But there was, what a lot of people don't realize is it was snowing, but it actually was a significant blizzard. In Washington had closed down. The government had closed. And in Washington, D.C., in the suburbs, when the federal government closes, that means you're done because that's, 60, 70% of all the employees. And that means that the roads are going to be horrible. Now, they had called us in. I was actually off that day and was going to go enjoy the snow. And then they called us in, said that it's bad. Can you come in? So we reported to the station. We had all of our units staffed, even our backup units. We were all ready to go, waiting for something interesting to happen just because they always do during a blizzard. We had no clue it'd be this interesting. And then all of a sudden we hear about a plane crash in the Potomac River. Now, we were 20 miles away from that plane crash. There were a whole lot of units between that site and us. So we just kind of sat back and was like, okay, well, we'll probably go backfill some areas that's had to go to the plane crash. And Washington, D.C. dispatch called and said, what can you send? So we told him, what we had in our station staffed, and he said, send it all. And so we just took off, had this big, long caravan. I was on a unit called Montgomery Medic 1, driving through the snow, and we're talking, 18, 24 inches of snow. Traffic at a gridlock. We're driving on sidewalks. We're going all around, and we're working our way down towards the Potomac River. And on a good day, that's 45-minute drive. And we're looking at probably 2 or 3 hours. But they wanted us to go there, so we didn't know what was going on. And so we've got this corridor going down, this caravan going down, and then all of a sudden they announce on the radio that Montgomery Medic 1 report to the Smithsonian station for a plane crash. And so the guy driving just veers off from the caravan and starts heading into a neighborhood. And I'm upset because I think it's just somebody is got plane and train confused. And now I'm not going to make it to the plane crash. I'm going to miss the big one, quote unquote, because some dispatcher couldn't tell the difference between a plane or a train. And then we're going through this neighborhood, and I finally, I had to ride in the back of the truck. So I stuck my head in through the window and just said, do you have any idea where you're going? And he said, no, because it was total whiteout. It was total blizzard. And I was like, well, probably would be a good idea to try to find out where to go instead of just driving around aimlessly. And we found a police car that was sitting there with a couple of cops in it and banged on the window, scared the daylights out of them, and said, how do you get to the Smithsonian station? And so they escorted us down. We finally get there. The Smithsonian station sits right on the mall in Washington, D.C. So there's this big open area that was just totally deserted and full of just a total white winter wonderland. It was just beautiful, still. And the Smithsonian station is actually just a hole in the ground with an escalator that goes down into the station. We get there, and there's not another piece of apparatus there. Nobody's there. It's dead quiet, nothing, which just convinced me that the dispatcher had made this horrible mistake. And that I'm going to miss the plane crash. We get our gear out. We get met by a DC fire chief. I was like, okay. And they're going down into the hole. And he came up and said, you don't need to bring that stuff with you. And we're like, oh, great. Well, it's... and I always had a policy that if I went down into the subway system, I brought my gear with me because it's too far to go get it again. So I just told my crew that we're bringing everything with us. We get down to the tracks, nothing going on in that station, the platform. So we start walking the tracks. Then we come around a bend and we see a subway car derailed.
Yeah.
But there's no sound, anything. And once again, I was just like, okay, so it's a stupid derailment that happen every now and then, but obviously it's so quiet that nothing's going on. So now here I am underneath the mall, and there's a plane crash in the Potomac River that I'm going to miss. And then just as I got up to the car, Hearst tool, one of the hydraulic rescue tools, motor started up, and I was like, well, that's different, because that means they're cutting somebody out of something. And then I got to the car, and there was another DC fire chief there in the car. And I said, I'm, Paramedic Murphy, Montgomery Medic 1. I was told to respond down here. And he just said, well, thank God you're here. Your patient is at the end of this car in between the 3 dead ones. And I was kind of like, okay, that's different. And so I hopped up in the car, which the bottom of the car is probably at about the 6-foot level. And I hopped up, and then on the other side of the car, I could see the rest of the tracks, and it was absolute Armageddon. There were lights, medics, patients, everything. And this had been a major train crash.
Yeah.
So then we had to cut out some of the dead bodies to get to my patient. Wow. And eventually took him out the other one to the next station, which is called Federal Triangle, and got to the platform there with my patient, who was traumatically injured, had to go to GW. And then once I got to the station, once again, there was just medics and patients. And I was just like, how could it be so quiet up until that car? And then I took that patient up, took him to GW, and then when I got done with dropping the patient off at GW, then I got sent down to the plane crash. But it was over and done with by then. Right, but it was pretty eerie. What a lot of people don't realize, too, is the plane crashed on the bridge, and that bridge was filled with cars. And so part of the plane's fuselage literally stomped about 8 or 10 cars. Yeah. And they were literally flattened, and some people passed away in those cars as well. But as far as the rescue operation, that had been long done and gone. So we stood there in the snow and freezing cold for a while, and then they eventually sent us back home. But a lot of people don't realize that almost when they went back and looked at it, it was almost simultaneous, within like a minute or two, where the plane crashed and the subway actually, it just switched tracks and then tried to back up. And when it backed up, it took one of the walls in between the 2 tracks, acted like a can opener, and just literally opened up and crushed all the people as the train was backing up for about 2-3 cars worth of people. And it killed like 5 or 6 there.
Wow.
But that was an interesting day. And
a lot can happen at once.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that there was a second huge operation that was going on, which was that subway. And I was just a paramedic on an individual unit. I wouldn't even want to try to imagine how to manage that incident from a command and control point of view, because you had the weather and then 2 major mass casualties. Right. One was in Washington, D.C., one was actually in Virginia. The plane crash was managed from the Virginia side. So you also had all those jurisdictions that you had to deal with.
Yeah. What's one that you were kind of on the control side?
Well, you're never in control. You only pretend you're in control.
Right, but
circumstances or whatever you want to believe dictate things. You just try to, we always say this is the best you can hope for is controlled chaos.
Sure.
Or quasi-controlled chaos.
Right.
It's still going to be chaos. The bombing was one. The tornadoes, the 1999 tornadoes, 2008, all the different tornado strikes that we've had. I was actually in the command center for the 2013. We have a medical operations center. Specifically, a group of people get together, try to coordinate what the medical system needs. And we have got such great weather prediction here in this area that they called us and said something bad's going to happen. We don't know when, but we know it's bad. It is going to be bad. So we went ahead and staffed it just on the word of the weather service. And sure enough, about 3:30, something bad happened. the 1999 tornado, of course, the bombing, everybody's familiar with what happened in the bombing. I was in the headquarters building around 10th and Walker. We found out about the bombing when the ceiling tiles all lifted up and came down on our heads. It damaged the building. We went outside to the garage area thinking that our building had blown up because the percussion wave was that strong.
Right.
And then we looked out the window and saw the column of smoke, 7 blocks away. So we realized that, number one, it wasn't our building that blew up. And number two is, whatever it is, it was pretty impressive because it shook our building that far away.
Yeah.
And that was living down there for the first 72 hours and about a 35-day deployment down there where I pretty much lived down there most of the time. A lot of people don't realize is that the last live patient came out at 9 o'clock that night, so about 12 hours. But there was a need for planning and preparedness because that building was incredibly unstable.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people working in it, and they were removing a lot of debris, which was kind of holding up that building. So the risk of that building collapsing on its own was very, very present.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people don't realize what I consider the true heroes is those Allied construction, Allied steel guys, because they basically stabilized the building with construction workers before the firemen and policemen and paramedics could, or while the firemen and policemen and paramedics were working.
Yeah.
But their stabilizing the building stopped it from falling down when we were trying to retrieve the bodies and stuff like that. So a lot of people don't realize is that there are, in every incident, there are unique, unheard of, unrecognized people that do superlative work that really make the difference. And the people they are working realize how important they were, but they don't always get the media. The police, the firemen, everybody gets all the heroics, but there's always somebody. It's a public works. During the bombing, public works turned off the water to the building. In fact, if you look at pictures, if you see people drenched from head to toe, they were there early because it busted up the sprinkler system. And there were a lot of people that were in danger of drowning because they were trapped. The basement was filling up with water. And it was a city public works person that turned off the water to the building. That act alone probably saved 10 lives. Never hear about that. And that goes on with everyone. The 99 tornado, that was interesting because we knew we were going to have a disaster. We had 45 minutes warning. And what do you do in 45 minutes? We sat and we did the deployment, made sure everybody's safe, told the units that when we tell you to, go find cover, identify your cover now. And then as it got closer, we moved them back, getting ready to stay out of harm's way, to be able to come in behind it. But we sat there and watched it on TV just like everybody else, realizing that, in about an hour, our life is going to change significantly here. And sure enough, it just kept on coming and plowed in. We almost got taken out by a backside eddy. When a large tornado goes through, a lot of times there's little tornadoes that are affiliated with it, especially one that size. That thing was a pretty big tornado. So when it went by, we filed it behind it to start trying to pick up the pieces. And all of a sudden, our vehicle lifted up, and it was a Ford Expedition, I think, I think it was an Expedition. But it felt like it lifted up in the air, and then when it came back down, the wheels were turned, so it jerked in turned direction. Driver got it under control, and so I just looked at him and said, "Did what I think happened just happen?" And he said, "Yeah, we just got caught by one of those eddies." So then we had a cameraman with us, and we told him his job was to look out the back window and look for tornadoes. And he thought we were joking with him. And then we just gave him some choice language, and because we didn't know if it was coming. It happened to us once. It could happen to us again.
Yeah.
And then it also was the challenge of where do you start?
Yeah.
You've got 18 miles by 1 mile wide of total destruction.
Yeah.
So we were arguing about where to start, and we saw an Oklahoma City engine company go down Western Avenue, and I said, okay, we'll follow him. We'll just start wherever he starts.
Sure.
And pulled up in front of Westmore High School, and that's where we started.
Sure.
And kept from there.
Yeah. That actually, I guess in some way, kind of, there's no good way to transition to the second half of the podcast. So, what is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
It's important. I was born Roman Catholic, raised Roman Catholic, exceptionally comfortable in Roman Catholic churches, in the Roman Catholic lifestyle. Got some disagreements like most American Catholics have with the World Catholic Church. But that being said, I'm not a big fan of organized religion per se. In fact, I have a quote from Jethro Tull that's up on my wall in my office. Is I asked this God a question, and by way of firm reply, he said, "I'm not the kind that you have to wind up on Sunday." So it's spirituality, religious relationship, what have you, is a 24/7, 365, and it's not dictated by whether you attend Mass or not.
Yeah.
Don't particularly care for the people that go to Mass, act all devout, and then go live their life as
Whatever else.
ugly people or what have you during that period of time. I'm interested in all faiths, all religions. I've actually studied them to a certain degree. Every one of them has interesting aspects to it.
Yeah.
I'm also what makes one religion right over the other religion being right. Can 1.5 billion Chinese be totally wrong because they're not Christian? Can 600 million Muslims or whatever it is be wrong? So I just kind of prefer just that there's some type of superior being, some type of intellectually a superior energy, superior being, something beyond what our life is right now.
Right.
Call it God, call it what have you. Now, emotionally and based upon my past, I'm still very much a Christian, love the tenets of the Christian faith. Even if you don't like Christianity, it's still a pretty nice set of rules for society to live by. And if I get stressed or I default to Christianity and my Roman Catholic faith. So that, you're existing intellectually on one level, and then viscerally on another level. So my visceral is Christianity and the Catholic Church. Intellectually, I'm open to anything, even to the concept that it's just energy and you're transferring energy one place to the next and things like that. Buddhism fascinates me. Yeah. The Taoism, I'm interested in all of that because I don't discount them as being just absolutely wrong. Sure. And faith is the belief in the absence of proof.
Sure.
So you got to believe. I understand why people be agnostic. Atheism seems to be a active religion of its own, even though it's the absence or refusal of belief and stuff like that. And then I'm very much to each their own. I do not like a particular faith. That means you're wrong. That just disgusts me when that happens. Sure. Because you don't know who's right or wrong. You'll find out eventually.
Yeah. So as an extension of that, what is your definition of God?
Superior being or presence. Or entity, and you can extrapolate it once again intellectually, is anything from energy to a spiritual being that controls things that we don't understand.
Yeah.
What that entity is and what they're actually controlling. Could be anything from a scientific energy time type dimension to the typical spiritual being. Viscerally, I still default to the spiritual being.
Sure.
That there is something, someone, call it God, that is greater than us, that controls things that we don't understand.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a dichotomy.
Right. Yeah.
It's maybe a cop-out answer, but it's...
No, I do that a lot too.
Yeah, but then it's a constant struggle, which it should be. And it should be a constant learning process too. I don't like blind faith. I really admire people that have blind faith because that makes life so much easy. But it's an intellectual, visceral struggle. And I love Christianity because of the tenets of Christianity. Some of the tenets of Islam are incredible tenets as well. But it's how you live. Spirituality is how you live your life every day and what actions you take. And are you doing things for selfish interest or are you doing things for the greater good?
Yeah.
And if you're living yourself a life for the greater good, non-selfish interest, loving the people and the planet, right. It doesn't make a difference if you're Islam or Christian or Jewish or what have you. That may be the little pigeonhole box that you feel comfortable in. Mine's Christianity, but the next person's could be Islam. As long as you're living like that, then you're living a spiritual life.
Yeah. And the other extension of faith, I guess, is free will an illusion? And how is it or is it not?
No, I don't think free will. It all depends where you land on that continuum of control intellectually. And if you're a firm believer in predestination and that the entity or whatever it is, superior being, controls all things, then you can make the argument that it is not. I would make the argument that because you have to make conscious choices to determine how you live, and how you're going to interact with other people and how you're going to treat other people. And integrity requires choice and it requires conscious action. I say that free will has been left up to the individual to demonstrate or allow him or her to act in certain ways.
Yeah.
So I think there is free will, and I think you have to, because I can't imagine that X amount of people are going to be jerks and X amount of people are going to be wonderful people. I think that the spirituality, in a large extent, and organized religion to a far lesser extent, but still to some degree, provides you the ground rules of engagement.
Yeah.
And then if free will decides how you as an individual act within those ground rules.
Yeah. So I guess given the experiences that you've seen and lived through and kind of the chaos, how does that kind of take part amongst your spirituality?
Reinforces it to some degrees. It makes you, if you, I think there's a statement that there are no atheists in foxholes. When you're in crisis, chaos, and when you're scared, I could tell you that you switch quickly, or at least I do. I go very quickly from intellectual to visceral. Yeah. And then I'm a Christian, and I'm calling on God or Jesus Christ to try to help make things better happen. I don't really question why do bad things happen to people. They just do. I don't try to get into this because God wants you to do this, or you're demonstrating the ability for people to be good by having bad things. I don't know why bad things happen, just like I don't know why good things happen. They just happen. And trying to solve that riddle, I think, is kind of an exercise in frustration.
Right.
But for example, we took over a Catholic rectory during the bombing. And that was our operational center. It was right across the street from the Merrill building. And 2 people have been critically injured. Luckily, the priest that was there was away at the time. But that house got treated with an incredible amount of respect.
Sure.
And we even spray painted Pax Vobiscum on the plywood, which is Latin for peace be with you. And the chaplains were important. Their work was important. So I think when you hit crisis and you see suffering, you yourself tend to become more spiritual, or at least more aware of your spirituality. Yeah. And you also realize that other people have become more aware of their spirituality. It tends to rise to a higher level in society than it does at a normal.
Right.
And then when you're in a command and control, you have to recognize that you not only have to look out for the physical well-being of people that are working the incident, but you also have to look out for spiritual well-being.
Yeah.
And if they want time off to go to church or something like that, that's just like going to the doctor. And you have to allow them that. Or if they want to go attend a religious service down at site, you allow them to do that.
Yeah.
Things like that. So probably the short answer is it brings spirituality, faith, religion to a higher level than it exists in normal society for a multitude of reasons. Personal needs, group needs, things like that.
Yeah. And then what kind of seems to happen in moments of disaster is that people tend to come together a lot more often than they normally would. So, I mean, a question that I normally ask, but kind of with that perspective, how do we reduce the division that kind of pervades our culture kind of generally?
Oh, you want me to solve a big problem? I think
Mostly just talk about it.
I think one thing is that I think spirituality, faith, religion can be a wonderful tool to do that if it's not hijacked.
Yeah.
I think the most dangerous thing we can have is hijacked faith. Whatever it may be, there's just as much hijacked Christian faith as there are as Islam faiths and stuff. Islam is a wonderful, peaceful religion at the surface level. It's just when it's hijacked, and any faith can be hijacked, and then people get justification. So religion is a double-edged sword for doing that. But it does provide some type of rules. I think one way of doing it, is reducing the inequity gaps that occur. I think that's a source of a lot of strife and strife. There's all sorts of things. Education is a huge piece of it. And then I think that it's just in some people's common nature to have problems being able to interact with others. Mental health is a big issue. I think we're just scratching the surface of what does it mean to be mentally well. And it's probably not just that you're not mentally ill. I think there's people that would be perfectly mentally well and pass whatever exam we have, and yet there's hidden or different or some aspect of their emotional and behavioral aspect that does not allow them to act in the way that's probably best for society. They're self-serving, what have you. I think the corporate structure, you need some type of incentive to move humanity forward. Yeah. And greed has always been a good way of moving humanity forward. I'd like to see that kind of removed for scientific excitement, justification, but we can't just sit around and just say we all love each other. We still need to feed and stuff like that.
Right.
So I probably have gone all around the planet on that, but I think we need to look at education and then mental health development, not mind control necessarily, but making sure that things that negatively affect a child and then an adult's mental and behavioral makeup are identified and mitigated where they can be. And I think we just do a really piss poor job of doing that.
Sure.
the flip side of that, though, is that you don't want to get into mind control where everybody's
Right.
thinking the same. It's just like anything else. If you take it to the extreme, faith being one of those, take it to the extreme, it actually becomes such a negative that it kind of cancels any positive that you could have had out of it. Mental health assessment and treatment could be the same. And then eventually we get to the point where it becomes a societal expectation. It's the societal expectation now is to succeed, which is led by greed, which is led by material goods. And as long as that's there and perpetuated and reinforced by media, social networking, what have you, that we're not going to allow the breeding ground for the behavior that we want, because we're telling people that in order for you to be valued as a human being, you have to get X, Y, and Z. And so they go try to get X, Y, and Z. And in the process, particularly if their mental makeup is not one that facilitates peace, love, and understanding type thing, then you've got real negative behavior. What you replace that with is still very much up in the air. But I think is if we value people, like Mahatma Gandhi at the same level that we value Kim Kardashian, then we've gotten somewhere. But until that happens, we're going to keep perpetuating a stereotype that's going to perpetuate bad behavior towards each other.
Sure. As an extension of that train of thought that you're kind of following, do you believe that humans are evil by nature?
No. Well, let me back up on that. No, I don't think they're evil by nature, because a child is not evil by nature. And a child is the beginning stages of human. Now, can things happen to make them evil? Yes. But by nature, I don't think they are. I think some are probably born with some types of physiological issues or behavioral issues. The amygdala doesn't develop or what have you, that can create behavior, but I don't know if it's evil. But I think human beings, like any animal, starts out not in an evil way. Evil is learned, or the consequence of trauma, or just a behavior pattern that develops because they're chasing that golden material good.
Yeah. And to kind of flip away from the negative, what are you, and especially given right now, what makes you optimistic about our future?
People. I think the human condition is still there, because I've seen it in every disaster. The Oklahoma City bombing was a pure act of whatever you want to call it, evil to retribution, what have you, but it was a negative act. A huge negative act that had horrible consequences. But that was trumped by the Oklahoma Standard. Katrina, horrible problems occurred due to ineffective city management, racism, inequities, income inequities, whatever reason you want to put in there. Bad things happen, but I saw some incredible things happen with humanity. I saw a couple that saw a lady sitting on her porch in a wheelchair, blind. They did not know this lady from Adam, but they knew that she sat there, she would drown. So they found a baby pool. They put her in the baby pool, and they waited around with her for a day and a half in a baby pool. They floated her and carried her around. And then when she came to us, they were still with her because they had taken emotional ownership of her well-being. And I saw that happen all over. But that doesn't make the news. So what makes me optimistic is I think that as a human race, we can be there. We can get there. I think there's some huge roadblocks. that may stop us from ever reaching it. We may kill ourselves off before we get there, but I think we're capable of getting there.
Yeah. Then what makes you content?
What makes me content?
Yeah. Or happy, however you want to interpret that.
My wife, my dogs, my family. That's pretty much contentment now. Is I'm very happy not doing a whole lot. I've done enough. But my family has always been the anchor. I'm very, very fortunate that I've got a wonderful wife and family, and that makes all the difference in the world. If you have that anchor, you can deal with a whole lot of stuff. Sure. But if you lose that anchor, then you tend to go adrift very quickly dealing with all the stuff that we have to deal with.
Sure.
And now that everything's gone away and everything's temporary, the only thing that you want to be permanent is your relationships and your family.
Yeah.
So that makes me content.
Yeah.
Reading, the usual things that make me content.
Yeah.
I love nature. I love traveling. I tend to like the non-touristy places. I like to go experience other people's cultures, lives.
Yeah.
I love to go to Ireland. I'm very comfortable there. But what makes me content is the family being safe, secure, and then available.
Yeah.
And that's all you really need.
2 more questions for you. So what advice do you have for people in general?
Don't forget the 2 pieces of advice. Public health practices matter, and they can make a difference.
Yeah.
So it may seem kind of silly right now because you've heard it all over the place, but for human decency and the good of the health and well-being of society, just good public health practice.
Yeah.
The old wash your hands, sneezing, that type of stuff. If you're sick, whatever, stay home. Easier said than done sometimes, I realize.
Sure.
And the other is take a good look at yourself, and are you acting the way that some of your more admirable historical figures would act? Your Gandhis, Mandelas, Buddhas, Jesus Christ, or are you chasing that material good and following the Kim Kardashian? And I have nothing against Kim Kardashian, it's just that the amount of attention.
The example.
As an example. Or are you chasing the Kardashians? Because I really think if you chase the Kardashians, you may be financially well off, but you won't be happy.
Sure.
And you won't have done anything to really perpetuate yourself or your family or your fellow man.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best thing is just stop and just decide, how am I reacting, and then why am I reacting that way?
Sure.
And if the answer is I'm doing it because of X, Y, and Z, then you may accept that. It may be great, but probably just assess yourself as, cut through the BS and all the, what's the term I'm looking for? Rationalization. There's a huge amount of rationalization goes on. I have to act this way because of this, or, and just really challenge every bit of rationalization, get down to the nitty gritty and just, why am I acting this way?
Yeah.
And can I act any different? Because until you do that, you're not going to get to that point where we're, as a society, acting the way we should versus the way that we do.
Yeah. And then last one, cake or pie?
Pie, definitely. Oh boy, I love baked goods all the way around, but definitely pie. Apple, blueberry, rhubarb, pumpkin. I've been a pie fanatic since I was 2 years old, I think. You ask that question to anybody that knows me, and they'll tell you. Oh yeah, real easy.
Michael, thank you for doing this with me.
My pleasure.
Normally, people kind of plug what they've got going on, but you're not really a public individual. So instead, something you want to
I'm
tell
going to
people
plug the reassessment of yourself and cut through the rationalization and
Yeah.
just do a reassessment.
Sweet.
Because that'll be better. That'll benefit me more than anything.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm Santiago Ramones.
And I'm Michael Murphy.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music. You can find my composery stuff through my SoundCloud or my Master's Recital, which is all on YouTube or on my website. And you can find all the stuff that I do with Power Cycle, which is a electronic experimental composer trio. We have an album that's streaming everywhere called Too Many Damn Cables. And I always end my podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.